how does American democracy get deconstructed if Donald Trump wins? How does it get taken apart? Turns out there's an actual project to do this. It's been funded by a bunch of right-wing billionaires. In fact, the guy in charge of it, the guy who's largely in charge of it, his name is Eric O'Keefe, according to sourcewatch.org, quote, has deep ties to Charles and David Koch and has been a founder and funder of numerous right-wing groups, including Wisconsin Club for Growth, through its Convention of States project, and that's what I'm talking about here. They are pushing for a constitutional convention in order to severely restrict federal power, for example, by redefining the Commerce Clause to prohibit Congress from passing child labor or anti-discrimination laws, or by adding a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. This, and it's not just the balanced budget amendment. Here's where this is at. This is like from Wikipedia. In December 2013, nearly 100 legislators from 32 states met at Mount Vernon to talk about how to call a convention. This is a constitutional convention to rewrite our Constitution so that our Constitution works for the billionaires but no longer works for the rest of us. In February 2014, U.S. Senator Tom Coburn announced after his retirement from Congress he would focus on promoting the Convention of States to state legislatures. In December 2015, Marco Rubio endorsed it, the call for an Article 5 convention. In January 2016, Texas Governor Greg Abbott called for a Convention of States to restrict the power of federal government. In September 2016, CSG held a simulated convention to propose amendments to the U.S. Constitution in Williamsburg, Virginia. An assembly of 137 delegates representing every state gathered to conduct a simulated convention. These guys are practicing. They have been rehearsing this since 2013. The simulated convention passed amendments relating to 6 topics, including requiring the states to approve any increase in the national debt, imposing, in other words, if you have a national emergency, our national debt went to 120% of GDP as a result of World War II. We would not have been able to fight World War II if every state had to pass a resolution or had to pass legislation saying, yes, raise the national debt. Literally would not have been able to fight World War II. We wouldn't have been able to get out of the Great Depression. After World War II, we were, you know, the tail end of the Great Depression, and Dwight Eisenhower increased our national debt to build the national highway system, which stimulated the economy and continues to this day. Paid for itself 100 times over. The GI Bill, for every dollar we spent sending young men to, mostly men, you know, this is returning GIs from World War II, to college, we got $7 in additional tax revenue back, but it required deficit spending. But, oh no, we can't have that, right? Restricting the, so and back to this thing. Requiring the states to approve any increase in the national debt, imposing term limits. What do term limits do? They do away with the institutional memory of legislative bodies and replace it with the lobbyists as the institutional memory. This is why I'm on the FreedomWorks newsletter. This is why FreedomWorks has been pounding on this. Oh, we have to have term limits. You don't want legislators who've been in office for a decade or more, who know where the bodies are buried, who know how laws are passed, who know who's good and who's bad, who know who you can trust and who you can't. You don't want them around. You want new legislators to have to go to lobbyists, corporate lobbyists, and ask them how things work here, because the lobbyists have been there for 20, 30 years. No term limits on lobbyists. We, by the way, do have term limits. They're called elections. Restrict the scope of the Commerce Clause to limit the power of federal regulations. In other words, block the ability of the EPA to develop new regulations, block the ability of basically all these agencies, require a supermajority to impose federal taxes. In other words, 2/3 of Congress in both houses. Repeal the 16th Amendment. That's ending the income tax. The 16th Amendment established the income tax. Repeal the income tax. Again, I'm telling you, this is all about the billionaires. And giving the states the power to abrogate any federal law, regulation, or executive order. So a state can say, you know, like Louisiana can say, well, you know, hey, the Koch brothers want to build a refinery down here and just pollute the crap out of Louisiana, and they're going to pay off all the politicians down here. So, you know, even though the federal law says that there's limits on how much pollution and poison they can put in our air, we're going to let them do it anyway. The Convention of States website notes that as of 2019, 15 states had signed on. They need 38. To literally change the Constitution, top to bottom. They need 34 to start the process. Well, here's where we're at right now. This started in March of 2014 when Georgia signed on. They were the first state. That year, it was Georgia, Alaska, Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, Indiana, Oklahoma, and Louisiana in 2014. Since Trump took over the White House, they have added Arizona, North Dakota, Texas, and Missouri. Just in the first 3 months of this year, Arkansas, Utah, and Mississippi. The states where one chamber of the state legislature has passed this so far: Arizona, North Dakota, Texas, Missouri, Arkansas, Utah, and Mississippi. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the list I just read that has been added since Trump took the White House. The ones where one chamber has passed it are New Mexico, Mississippi, Iowa, South Dakota, Virginia, North Carolina, West Virginia, and New Hampshire. And now, according to the Convention of States website, this year they're working to bring in Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Nebraska, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, North Dakota, West Virginia, Illinois, and Hawaii. Now, that's 40 states. They only need 34 to start the process, 38 to pass it. Arnold Toynbee said, when the last man who remembers the horrors of the last great war dies, the next great war becomes inevitable. I would update that to say, when the last American who remembers how quickly democratic constitutions were replaced in Europe in the 1930s dies, the replacement of democracy in America becomes inevitable. This is the agenda, and they're quite proud of it. They're quite proud of it. This is what we're going to do. We're going to rewrite the U.S. Constitution. And what's going to happen to your Fourth Amendment right of privacy? What's going to happen to your Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination? What's going to happen to your First Amendment right of free speech? I think you know where it's going to go when the billionaires decide to rewrite our Constitution.